No. Gonna turn green like the Browns.
Hi, hello and welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here then hi, my name's Zoe. Please subscribe, please join my little family that I have here on YouTube. It means so much to me. So today I'm back at you with another serial killer Sunday, and today's video is a long one, so I'm sat on the couch getting comfy, so why don't you do the same too. Get a brew, sit down and get ready for this video. So today we are talking about Jeffrey Dahmer. Now my accent is probably making me say that wrong, I apologise, but I have tried to say it like 10 times now and I'm still saying it wrong. I know I'm saying it wrong, but yeah, we are talking about Jeffrey Dahmer, so I'm just going to jump right into this case. So Jeffrey Dahmer is one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. He killed and sexually assaulted more than 17 people in between 1978 and 1991. So I just want to put a little disclaimer out there that this video does talk quite a lot about death, and I've really no other option than to go into detail. I'm not going to go into far too much detail, but I will be going into a lot of detail. So if that is something that bothers you, I really advise you not to watch this video. Please go and check out the Serial Killer Sundays playlist. I'll link it down below, and there might be a video in there what's a bit more suitable for you. But yeah, we do talk a lot about death and the detailed things that happened to some of the victims. Jeffrey Dahmer was born on the 21st of May in 1960 to his parents Joyce and Eleanor Dahmer. So as a child, Jeffrey was pretty much a normal child. He was energetic, he played with friends, he was pretty much just an average kid. This all changed at the age of 4 when Jeffrey had surgery to correct 2 hernias. So he became withdrawn from everybody and withdrawn from all situations that was happening around him. He didn't have friends anymore, he would just get frustrated at people, and this would make people not want to be around Jeffrey. So when he started to go through puberty, Jeffrey noticed that he was gay, and he didn't confide or talk to anybody about this. He didn't even tell his parents that he was gay, and I suppose this is back in the day. There was a lot of stigma around people's sexuality, so that's probably why he didn't tell anybody about it. So when in high school, Jeffrey had started to drink alcohol quite a lot. He would even sneak it into school and hide it in his locker. So when one of his peers asked Jeffrey why did he drink alcohol, he replied, "It's my medicine." So Jeffrey did admit that the compulsions for necrophilia and murder started when he was around 14 years old. So even though Jeffrey didn't communicate with anybody around him, he was very intelligent and he did leave school with very good grades. So it is believed that his parents' divorce was the thing that made Jeffrey snap, and it was believed that this was the catalyst for his thoughts and compulsions becoming a reality. So in June 1978, Jeffrey Dahmer committed his first murder. He picked up a hitchhiker called Stephen Hicks, and he persuaded Stephen to come to his home, and he had told Stephen they was just going to have a few drinks and hang around for a little while. So Jeffrey applied Stephen with drinks so that he was very intoxicated, and Stephen had decided to leave, but Jeffrey wasn't happy with this. So as Stephen got up to leave, he struck him from behind with a 10-pound dumbbell, and this knocked him unconscious. Jeffrey then strangled Stephen to death with the metal bar of the dumbbell and then stripped him naked. So the following day, Jeffrey dismembered Stephen's body. He then put it into plastic bags and buried it in his parents' back garden. A couple of weeks later, Jeffrey dug up Stephen's remains. He dissolved the flesh in acid and poured it down the toilet, and he also used a sledgehammer to crush Stephen's bones, and then he scattered the remains of the bones in some woodland area behind his parents' home. His father had returned home 6 weeks after Jeffrey's first murder. Jeffrey then enrolled into Ohio State University and he had hoped to study business. So at college, Jeffrey was very unproductive, and this was mostly down to his excessive alcohol abuse. And despite the fact that his father had paid for his tuition in advance, Jeffrey decided to leave after 3 months. In January 1979, Jeffrey signed up for the US Army and he was sent to San Antonio to train as a medical specialist. In July 1979, he was stationed in Baumholder in Germany. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. In his first year, Jeffrey was an above average soldier, but unfortunately during his time in the army, he was accused by 2 other soldiers of rape. They said that Jeffrey had raped them. So Jeffrey's alcohol abuse got excessively worse and he was discharged in March 1981 because he was deemed unfit. After leaving the army, Jeffrey moved to Florida because he said he couldn't face his father, and he started to work in a sandwich shop. So most of his salary was spent on alcohol and he was staying in a motel, but he was evicted after he wasn't paying his rent. So he started to sleep on the beach but was continuing to work at the sandwich shop, but he realised he could no longer live like that and he decided to call his father and ask if he could move back in with him in Ohio. So after returning to Ohio, his drinking habits were still very bad. He was arrested for being drunk and disorderly and he was fined $60 and spent 10 days in jail. His father tried to help Jeffrey stop drinking but nothing seemed to work. In December 1981, Jeffrey was sent to live with his grandmother because this was the only person he ever really engaged with and the only person he ever talked to. So his father was hoping that this would have a good effect on Jeffrey and it would sort of change his path that he had already made for himself in life. So things were initially going great. He was abiding by his grandmother's house rules, he was attending church and he was willingly doing chores and DIY and housework around the home. But even though things were still going good, Jeffrey was still continuing to drink alcohol. So in 1982, Jeffrey did find work at Milwaukee Blood Plasma Center as a phlebotomist. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that wrong as well, I'm sorry. But unfortunately, after only 10 months, Jeffrey was laid off. So he relied on handouts from his grandmother and remained unemployed for 2 years. So Jeffrey had actually stolen a male mannequin and he used this to release his sexual fantasies, and his grandmother did discover it after him having this for a while, so he had to throw it away. So in late 1985, Jeffrey started to attend bathhouses and he described these bathhouses as these relaxing places. He was finding sexual partners from attending these bathhouses, but he started to get frustrated at his sexual partners because they moved during sex. He claims that he prefers to view people as objects rather than people. So because the fact that they moved during sex frustrated him, he decided to start drugging his sexual partners and rape them while they was unconscious. So the bathhouse found out what Jeffrey was doing and they revoked his membership. But this didn't stop him. He just started renting out hotel rooms and taking his sexual partners back to hotel rooms where he would again drug and rape them. So Jeffrey had read a newspaper article about an upcoming funeral of an 18-year-old male, and he decided that he was going to steal the corpse and take it home. He tried to dig up the coffin, but fortunately the soil was too hard and he gave up. In August 1986, Jeffrey was arrested for masturbating in front of 2 12-year-old boys. He at first admitted it, but then he stated he was just urinating and didn't realise there was anybody nearby. He was charged with a disorderly conduct and sentenced to 1 year in probation. On the 20th of November in 1987, Jeffrey met a 25-year-old man called Stephen Toomey. He persuaded Stephen to come back to the Ambassador Hotel with him in Milwaukee, and Stephen agreed. Jeffrey did claim that he had no intentions of murdering Stephen. He was just intending to drug and rape him. However, he woke up with Stephen's body underneath him. Stephen's chest was caved in and Stephen was covered in bruises, and one of Jeffrey's fists was also covered in bruises. Jeffrey claims he has no memory of killing Stephen. After he woke up, he decided to transport Stephen's body to his grandmother's house in a suitcase. Then a week after the murder, Jeffrey dismembered Stephen's body. He cut the flesh away from the bones, and he cut the flesh just small enough to handle. He put the flesh into garbage bags and again smashed Stephen's bones up with a sledgehammer. He disposed of the body in the trash, all except for Stephen's head. He kept Stephen's head wrapped in a blanket. After 2 weeks of this head being in the blanket, he decided to boil the head with soil eggs and bleach to try and preserve it. And he would use Stephen's head for his own sexual fantasies, to release his own sexual needs. But obviously, due to decomposition, after a while he had no choice but to dispose of the head. After the murder of Stephen Toomey, Jeffrey was actively on the prowl for more victims. So he would actively search in gay bars for his victims. He would then take them back to his grandmother's house where he would drug and rape them. 2 months after the murder of Stephen Toomey, Jeffrey met 14-year-old James, and he lured James back to his grandmother's house with the offer of $50 in return for sexual favours. They engaged in sexual activity before Jeffrey strangled him and left his body in the cellar. After a week of the body being in the cellar, he dismembered it just like he did with Stephen, and he disposed of it in the trash. He again boiled the skull, kept it before disposing of it. On the 22nd of March in 1988, Jeffrey met Richard Guerrero outside a club called Phoenix. He lured him in with the same incentive that he had offered James, and then he drugged, raped and then killed Richard with a leather strap. He dismembered the body within 24 hours and again he kept the skull. So on the 23rd of April, Jeffrey met another young man and took him back to his grandmother's house. And he drugged this man's coffee, and whilst he was with this young man, his grandmother heard him and had shouted, "Is that you, Jeff?" Jeffrey responded to make it seem like he was on his own. He then couldn't go through with killing this man, so he left his victim outside of County General Hospital. In September 1988, Jeffrey's grandmother asked him to leave the home. She was annoyed with all the late nights, all the men coming round, and she was really annoyed with the smell that was coming from Jeffrey's room. He found a 1-bedroom apartment on 25th North Street and moved in shortly after. The day after moving in, Jeffrey was arrested for drugging and sexually assaulting a 13-year-old boy. So he pleaded guilty to this, and whilst waiting to be sentenced, he moved back into his grandmother's home. And whilst waiting to be sentenced, he lured in Anthony Smears. He lured Anthony into his grandmother's home where he drugged, raped, sodomized, killed and dismembered Anthony, and it's quite unbelievable that that happened whilst he was awaiting sentencing for another crime already. So at his trial for molesting the 13-year-old boy, Jeffrey persuaded the judge that he was a changed man. How he did that, I do not know, but he persuaded him, and the judge decided that Jeffrey needed treatment, not incarceration. He was sentenced to 5 years probation, ordered to work 1 year at a work camp, and ordered to sign the sexual offenders register. After being released from the work camp, Jeffrey moved to North 25th Street in Milwaukee. Over the next 2 years, Jeffrey would continue to kill young men, and his death count rose to 17. He would kill his victims in the same way. He would drug and then rape and then kill them, and then he would dismember their bodies and keep their heads. Even though he stuck to the same ritual when killing, in some of his victims' cases he did start to eat the flesh of his victims, and this is why he was dubbed the Milwaukee Cannibal. He also drilled into one of his victims' skulls while they were still alive and injected acid into their skull. And why he did this, I do not know. It obviously is some sick way of torture. He would also select his victims, so he would select people that were not going to be missed and it would be less noticeable. So on the 27th of May in 1991, Jeffrey's neighbour Sandra Smith called the police because of a naked Asian boy running in the street. So Jeffrey did tell police that this boy was just a lover, and they believed him and took them both back to Jeffrey's flat. What the police didn't know is this boy was 14 years old, and this boy was also the brother of the boy that Jeffrey had previously molested and been charged for molesting. Once the police left them, he then proceeded to kill this boy. On the 22nd of July 1991, Tracy Edwards agreed to come back to Jeffrey's flat under the admission that he would get $100 in return for sexual favours. So Tracy had noticed the horrible smell and also the hydrochloric acid that was in a box in the corner of the room. So after a bit of small talk and a couple of drinks, Jeffrey tried to handcuff Tracy to himself, but he failed in doing so. He then told Tracy to go in the bedroom so that Jeffrey could take new photos of him, and when going into bedroom, this is where Tracy noticed a blue 57-gallon drum, and he soon noticed that that is where the smell was coming from. So Jeffrey held a knife to Tracy and forced him to undress. He then laid down with Tracy and lied on his chest and listened to his heart. He then told him that he intended to eat his heart. So obviously Tracy was very, very scared and was sort of in fighting mode and a survival type of mode, so he tried to get Jeffrey on his side. So he said, Jeffrey, can we go in the living room, have a drink, it's more air conditioning there, it's cooler, and Jeffrey agreed. Whilst all this was happening, Tracy was waiting for his next chance to escape. Whilst in the living room, Tracy noticed that Jeffrey's concentration was elsewhere, so he stood up, punched Jeffrey and knocked him off his feet and then escaped through the front door. At 11:30 p.m. on the 22nd of July, Tracy managed to flag down two police officers that were sat in their car on the corner of North 25th Street. He explained what he had just been through and then took them to the apartment. They arrived back at apartment 213 and Jeffrey openly let all three of them back in. So when police started to ask Jeffrey about the incident, he just didn't reply, he didn't say anything. All he said that there was a key in the bedside table to the cuffs that was on Tracy, and he went to get this key, but the police officers told him, no, you're not moving, stay there. So one of the officers decided to go and get this key, and whilst getting this key they came across a knife on the bed, which then summed up and which then confirmed Tracy's story. When getting the key, in the open drawer there was also Polaroid pictures of dismembered bodies. So this police officer went back to the living room where his partner was and he muttered to his partner, these are all real. So after noticing the police officers had the Polaroid pictures, Jeffrey tried to escape, but they managed to wrestle him to the ground and overpower him and get handcuffs on him. So whilst Jeffrey was handcuffed, the same police officer that searched the bedroom decided to search elsewhere. He opened the fridge and this is where he found a freshly severed head of a black young male. Jeffrey then muttered the words, for this I should be dead. When the apartment was being properly searched, 4 severed heads were found in the kitchen, 7 skulls were found in the bedroom. In Jeffrey's fridge they also found 2 severed hearts. In the freezer they found an entire torso, and they also found a bag of human organs. Elsewhere in the apartment they found 2 entire skeletons. They found a pair of severed hands. They found 2 severed and preserved penises and a mummified scalp. Also in the 57-gallon drum they found 3 entire torsos just sitting in acid, and a total of 74 Polaroid pictures were found. So the police that were searching and emptying apartment 213 described it as dismantling a museum rather than a crime scene. So after being arrested, Jeffrey admitted everything. He told the police officers everything about the murders, and he detailed everything surrounding the murders as well. He described the reason for the murders as being a never-ending feeling of not wanting to be alone. Jeffrey had this sense of if he was killing his victims, they was forever staying with him, and again that's sort of the reason behind him keeping the schools. 1 was a sexual reason, and 2 was because he just didn't want to feel alone. On the 25th of July 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer was charged with 4 murders. By the 22nd of August, he was charged with 14 further murders from the Wisconsin area. On the 14th of September, investigators discovered hundreds of bone fragments behind his parents' home, and DNA testing proved that these were the bone fragments of Stephen Hicks. He was charged with this murder 3 days later. Unfortunately, he wasn't charged with the murder of Stephen Toomey because it was claimed there wasn't enough evidence, and that he would only be charged if there was no unreasonable doubt that Jeffrey had done this. And unfortunately, he wasn't charged with the attempted murder of Tracy Edwards. Jeffrey Dahmer's trial started in January 1992. On the 15th of February, Jeffrey was found guilty of 15 counts of murder. The first 2 murders he was served life imprisonment and 10 years on top, and the rest of the murders he would serve a life sentence for each murder. So, for the first year of his imprisonment, he was kept in solitary confinement to protect himself, basically because of the heinous crimes he committed. His life was at danger, and if this was me, I would have sent him straight into the jail because of what he had done. But they had, as much as they probably wanted to do this, they had a duty of care, I suppose, to the inmates, so he was kept in solitary confinement for a year. On the 28th of November 1994, Jeffrey Dahmer was beaten to death with a metal pole by one of his fellow inmates. The inmate said Jeffrey had been taunting people about the crimes he committed. He was making his food into body parts and being really crude and horrible about the things that he did. So all that plus the severity of his crimes made this other inmate want to kill him, and that is a common thing in jails, especially when people have targeted children as well, and it's something you find that still happens today. If you have a murderer in a prison and a murderer who's murdered a child, that murder of the child is worse than a man who's murdered 10 men. That is just how it is in jails. It's sort of an authority sort of thing. But yeah, he was killed in prison, and I think he totally deserved what he got. And I think he's very, very lucky that he wasn't charged in a state that had the death sentence, because he definitely would have been sentenced to death. So that is all for the case of Jeffrey Dahmer, and I'm sorry if this lighting has been bad in this video. I have got a new ring light which I have told you a while back. This video was highly requested by a few people on my social media, so if you're not already over there on my Twitter and Instagram, you need to be, because I'm constantly asking for video ideas, I'm constantly asking for Q&A questions, so make sure you're over there to check out that video. Make sure you're over there to check out my socials, they'll all be linked below. So that is it for today's Serial Killer Sundays. If you have any requests, like I said, hit me up on Twitter or Instagram or comment down below. I love having requests because I like to make my videos interesting to everybody who watches them. And also, I'm nearly at 200 subscribers. Just remember, if I do hit 1k, which is very, very far away and would be a very long time away, I want to do a giveaway. So that's just a bit of an incentive to hit that subscribe button. So that is all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up. Please smash the like button. And I say that every time, it's the same thing. Please subscribe, and I shall see you in my next video. Bye bye.